They told me, "You're on your own financially." Then, barely a week later, they handed my sister the keys to a brand new condo. 2 bedrooms, a lake shimmering outside the windows, a glossy ribbon tied neatly across the door like a scene from a commercial. No one asked if I could cover next month's rent. No one noticed when I slipped out of their lives without making a sound. 4 years after that, my name landed on Forbes, and the research I dedicated my life to shifted the field. That's when my mother showed up unannounced, smiling like she had built the foundation I was standing on. She said she was there to celebrate me, but in her purse was a single sheet of paper that turned my blood to ice. I thought she'd come for reconciliation. She'd come for something else, something valued at exactly $1 million. My name is Linda Hayes. I grew up in a house that looked perfectly harmless from the outside. 2 stories, trimmed hedges, a driveway always swept clean. Neighbors waved from their porches and said, "Such a lovely family." But inside, it felt like living backstage in a play where the lead role had already been cast, and it wasn't me. My mother, Margaret, ran our home like a director with only 1 star. My sister, Sophie. Every discussion, every holiday, every framed photograph orbiting around her. If I showed up in a picture, it was either on the edge or by mistake. Sophie always shined. She was the dancer, the miracle baby, the one my mother described as a blessing they thought they'd never get. When she performed, Dad leapt from his chair to record every second. When I brought home flawless grades, he didn't even lower the newspaper. If I mentioned an accomplishment, Mom would say, "We don't show off, Linda." But somehow talking endlessly about Sophie never counted as bragging. At 16, Sophie received a brand new car wrapped in a red bow. I got her old bus pass and a reminder that gratitude builds character. Dinner followed the same script every night. Dad mumbling about work, Mom gushing over Sophie's newest achievement, me clearing dishes while pretending the shrinking inside wasn't real. The smell of dish soap became the scent of being unseen. I told myself invisibility meant independence, but I knew even then that it was just a story I told to survive. When I got accepted into college, I spent days rehearsing how to ask for help with living expenses. I picked a quiet moment, TV low, Dad not hiding behind the newspaper. "I'll need help with room and board," I said carefully. Mom continued folding laundry like I wasn't even in the room. Finally, Dad muttered, "You've got scholarships, right? You're 18 now. You'll figure it out." Those words didn't sound sharp, but they cut right through me. You're on your own financially. That evening, I filled out loan applications in the glow of a weak desk lamp while Sophie slept comfortably in her room across the hall. I didn't feel rage, just a strange echoing emptiness, like a door had quietly closed behind me and I wasn't invited back inside. College became a blur of lab hours, cheap instant meals, and part-time jobs squeezed between classes. I texted home occasionally, hoping someone might ask if I was coping. No one did. The family group chat kept flooding with pictures of Sophie. Sophie's outfits, Sophie's trips, Sophie's engagement to a man with movie star hair. I muted the notifications. When Dr. Elena Cruz, one of my professors, invited me to work in her lab, something inside me shifted. She told me I was precise, thoughtful, that I didn't just follow instructions, I understood them. No one had ever said anything like that to me. The lab became my refuge. The soft whir of centrifuges, the clean smell of ethanol, the quiet thrill when an experiment produced the numbers I prayed for. It was the first place where shrinking wasn't required. By graduation, I'd built a barrier around myself. Steady, necessary, protective. I stopped seeking approval from people who never offered it. I thought I'd freed myself completely from them, until one photo reminded me their choices still echoed. Sophie again, standing in front of a lake, holding a condo key. That same unmistakable red ribbon trailing from the door behind her. The caption read, "Happy 21st, baby girl," with hearts and glitter emojis my mother adored. 2 bedrooms, granite counters, waterfront view. Not a single message asking, "How are you, Linda?" I didn't throw the phone or cry. I just stared at that ribbon until the screen went dark. The shade was identical to the bow she'd received years ago. the color they used every time they celebrated her, a family hue I never wore. I placed the phone face down and returned to my experiment notes, measuring polymer dissolution rates like nothing had splintered inside me. But it had, cleanly, decisively. After that, the idea of home became something abstract, something I had already outgrown without realizing. My scholarship covered a windowless basement apartment that smelt faintly of noodles and old pipes. I lived in the lab more than my room. When Dr. Elena Cruz stopped by late at night with soft concern in her expression, I'd shrug and say, "Breaks are expensive." She'd look at me with a sadness that felt like understanding. The next term, she called me into her office. Warm lights, stacks of books leaning like old friends, a mug of half-cooled coffee beside her. "Linda," she said gently, "you've changed. Not in a harmful way, just focused. Whatever you're pushing towards, I hope it's for yourself, not just against the people who hurt you." I wanted to tell her it was both, but I only nodded. When Stanford offered me a fully funded PhD position, I didn't tell my parents, I didn't tell Sophie. I packed my dented Honda with notebooks and dying plants, then drove until the California sun replaced everything familiar. Somewhere along the drive, I stopped being someone's daughter. I became something else entirely. Stanford was another universe. People didn't care about popularity or backstories. They cared about ideas. I worked nights under the hum of fluorescent lights, each experiment a step further from the life I left behind. Silence finally meant concentration, not dismissal. Every so often, my phone lit up with photos from family gatherings I wasn't invited to. Mom standing between her daughters, one glowing with engagement rings, the other missing. I scrolled with the detached interest of someone observing strangers. Then one day, a message came only to me. "Heard you finished your PhD. Congratulations. Maybe now you can help your sister with her business." No question mark, no warmth, just expectation. I blocked the number. Years passed. My research grew into a startup. Small at first, fragile even. Mark Reynolds joined me as a partner, steady, intelligent, grounded. We built the company piece by piece until suddenly it wasn't small anymore. Investors called, articles circulated, and then Forbes reached out. Success arrived quietly, then loudly. And right on cue, the past tried to follow. A friend sent me a screenshot. "Your mom just posted about you." I opened social media for the first time in years. There she was, Margaret Hayes, smiling proudly beside Sophie. The caption, "So proud of my daughters. One runs a business, the other just made a breakthrough. A mother's sacrifices finally paying off." Sacrifices. The word lodged in my throat like stone. It wasn't a post, it was a rewrite, a version of our history where she'd always been supportive. I stared at it until my vision blurred. I considered commenting. I considered exposing the years of silence. But then I realized she hadn't written that for me. She wrote it so strangers could applaud her. So I did nothing, and that silence irritated her more than anything else. A few weeks later, my assistant buzzed through the intercom. "Linda, there's someone here asking for you. Says she's family." Family. A word with edges. "Send her in," I said, my voice steady even as my heartbeat stumbled. Before I could brace myself, the door opened. Her perfume arrived first. Vanilla and something too sweet to be sincere. She looked exactly the same. Perfect hair, polished pearls, that overwhelming confidence she used to fill a room before she even spoke. "Linda," she said warmly, arms outstretched, as though this was a reunion I had asked for. I stood slowly. "Mom." Her gaze drifted over my office. Glass walls, framed patents, quiet hum of achievement. "So, this is where the magic happens," she said. "Imagine my surprise seeing my own daughter in Forbes. You didn't even tell us." "You could have called," I replied. "I did," she said lightly. "You changed your number. I assumed you were busy. So I thought I'd come in person. Families should celebrate together, don't you think? Her voice was dipped in honey, but her eyes scanned my desk with intention. I gestured to a chair. Sit. She settled in, opened her purse with slow deliberation, and pulled out a neatly folded paper. Actually, she said, her smile tightening, I've been thinking about everything I've done for you. The sacrifices, the years I spent raising you girls. It wasn't easy. A chill crept up my spine. What are you talking about? She unfolded the page and slid it across my desk. This, she said, smiling like she'd just handed me a gift. I glanced down, typed mines, itemized, private school, tuition, meals, emotional labor, and at the bottom, a neat total, $1 million. It wasn't a joke. I looked up. You're asking me to pay you $1 million for being my mother? Her smile didn't move, but her eyes hardened. For everything I gave up, for all the things you could never repay, my breath caught. Family doesn't work like that. Family, she snapped, voice suddenly sharp. Family doesn't abandon the woman who gave them everything. I swallowed hard. You chose to have me, Mom. Children don't owe their parents for being born. For the first time, she faltered. Then she leaned closer. Can't or won't. I could have had a life, a career, a husband who stayed, but instead, I gave it all to you. Her words echoed, but something inside me stayed still. I'd lived my life trying not to upset her. That ended here. I'll help with your expenses, I said quietly, but not this. Her face froze. Then you're no longer my daughter. She stood, smoothed her jacket, and headed for the door. At the frame, she turned back. Your father would be ashamed of what you've become. And when she left, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, alive, and mercifully final. For a long time after the door shut, I didn't move. The hum of the AC filled the silence. She left behind a sterile white noise that almost sounded like peace. Then it hit me all at once. The tremor, the disbelief, the quiet ache that felt older than my bones. I sat back in my chair and stared at that piece of paper on my desk. $1 million. An invoice for motherhood. When the tears finally came, they weren't loud. They were measured, like something my body had been storing for decades, finally leaking through a crack. By morning, I wasn't crying anymore. I was done. I walked into the lab early before sunrise, before anyone else could see the wreckage on my face. The machines hummed softly, steady, and loyal. I started a new synthesis, wrote notes with the same precision I'd always had, and told myself this was how you heal, with order, with proof, with means measurable. Dr. Cruz found me an hour later, holding a cup of coffee. She looked at me, then at the empty space behind my eyes. She came, didn't she? I didn't ask how she knew. She always knew. She wants money, I said. $1 million. Dr. Cruz didn't flinch. And what do you want? I thought for a long moment. Peace, I said. But I don't think it's refundable. That night, I sat on the bathroom floor of my office, still wearing the champagne-colored dress from the party, my hands trembling so hard I could barely breathe. The mirror across from me reflected someone calm, detached, someone I didn't recognize. The woman who built a company that saved lives was breaking quietly in the corner of her own success. I remembered every Sunday dinner where my mother said, "We do everything for you girls." Every silent ride home where I tried to believe her. Every time she excused her cruelty as stress. And suddenly I could see it for what it was. Not sacrifice, but control. She gave so she could own. I texted Mark, Don't come by tonight. I need to think." 2 days later, I met with my lawyer. I told him to create a trust for my mother, enough to cover her basic needs, nothing more. Strict conditions, I said. She can't touch the principal. No withdrawals beyond the monthly stipend. He raised an eyebrow. "You're protecting her from herself." I shook my head. "I'm protecting me from her." The call started the next week. At first they were angry. "You'll regret this, Linda. You can't erase me." Then they turned pleading. "I forgive you, sweetheart. Just send the money so we can be family again." By the third round, they became threats. "Maybe the media should know how ungrateful you are." I stopped answering. Mark watched me one night, sitting on the couch, my phone lighting up over and over. "You don't have to read them," he said. "I'm not," I told him. "I just need to see how far she'll go."
Eventually, the messages slowed. The noise faded into static. And one morning, there were no more missed calls, no new emails, just quiet. That quiet felt earned. A month later, Dr. Cruz called me into her office again. "You've been working like someone's chasing you," she said softly. "Is it over?" I nodded. "Almost." She handed me an envelope. "Then take this weekend off. Go somewhere that isn't built from adrenaline." Inside was a printed ticket to a coastal retreat, a place where the lab noise would be replaced by waves. That night, I stood by my office window, city lights reflecting off the glass like distant stars. I thought of the woman who'd raised me, how she'd mistaken fear for love and guilt for loyalty. And I thought of myself, finally untethered, finally breathing in a life that wasn't borrowed. The acquisition ceremony came 3 months later. Our company had been valued at $80 million. Investors, journalists, champagne, the whole illusion of triumph. I smiled for photos, shook hands, said all the right words. No one saw the small scar beneath the perfection, the space where I'd cut off the last thread of her control. After the speeches, I stepped outside for air. The night was crisp, Pacific wind sharp enough to feel like cleansing. Mark joined me, handing me a glass of water instead of champagne. "You okay?" he asked. "I am," I said, and I meant it. But peace, I've learned, doesn't stay still for long. 8 years passed. The company thrived. We built, we healed, we lived. And then one autumn morning, driving through Seattle for a conference, I saw her again. She was sitting on a curb outside a coffee shop, a paper cup in her hand, gray hair, tangled, eyes dim but unmistakable. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. The world went quiet in that dangerous way it used to. I parked, bought 2 coffees, and sat beside her. She didn't recognize me at first. Then she whispered, "Linda," like a question she was afraid to finish. We talked for an hour. Half-truths, fragments, things too fragile to name. She said she was sick. Pride had taken what the world hadn't. When I left, I arranged help through the trust, not as a daughter repaying debt, but as a human refusing cruelty. I didn't forgive her that day, but I stopped letting her story define mine. And when I drove away, the city looked softer, like it was finally letting me go. I didn't tell anyone about that meeting for a long time. Not Mark, not Dr. Cruz. It didn't feel like a secret. It felt like closure. I didn't have to perform. The following week, I got a call from the social worker overseeing her case. They said she'd accepted the help but refused to list me as emergency contact. I almost laughed. Even at the end, she wanted the last word. I didn't fight it. Instead, I focused on the small mercies. She was safe, she had food, she wasn't on the street. The rest was no longer my job to fix. Some nights I'd sit on my balcony, looking over the city, thinking about how peace isn't loud. It doesn't roar like revenge or crash like heartbreak. It hums steady, quiet, like the machines in the lab that once held my world together. Dr. Cruz retired that winter. At her farewell dinner, she took my hands and said,
You've built everything you once wished someone would build for you. Don't forget to rest inside it. I promised I would try. Mark and I grew our company slowly, carefully. We created scholarships for girls in science, kids who reminded me of myself before the silence hardened. Each time I saw one of them light up over a breakthrough, something in me softened too. One morning, a letter arrived. No return address, just my name in a shaky hand. Inside, one line on plain paper. Thank you for the coffee. No apology, no signature. And yet it was enough. That evening, I drove to the lake near our old neighborhood. The water was still the kind of stillness that holds its breath before dawn. I whispered a goodbye no one heard and let it sink into the ripples. Freedom didn't look like victory. It looked like calm. For the first time, I understood love doesn't always heal you. Sometimes it teaches you who you must become without it. People think closure is a conversation, some neat ending where everyone hugs and cries. It's not. It's the moment you stop waiting for the apology that will never come, and you live anyway. I don't hate my mother. I don't love her either. I just wish her peace somewhere far from mine. If you've ever had to build yourself from the silence your family left behind, know this. You don't owe anyone for surviving. You don't owe them your forgiveness to stay free. Share your story in the comments. Someone out there needs to hear it. And if this story found you, stay.